Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today we are looking at something a little bit unique. This is not a knife I've seen, all over Instagram. It's not a knife that has generated a whole lot of hype or discussion, but there are some really impressive things going on with this Klotzli Swiss border guard knife. This is designed by a German, Dietmar Pohl. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but he's called a tactical expert in the description. Whatever that means, whether he's a soldier, police officer, whatever the case may be, German special forces or something, who knows. But designed by a tactical expert. The design is attractive and simple, and so I'm not taking anything away from that. This is there's no issue with this design whatsoever. Um, there are a couple of reasons that I wanted to share this with you. First of all, it hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but there are some really standout features here that I want to touch on. And then there'll be some downside as well. Okay, so really nice knife. Fit and finish is very good. Made in Switzerland. The size and weight on this is right up my alley. So this is 8.5 inches overall, 3 3/4 inches on the blade, 4 3/4 handle. So the blade to handle ratio is absolutely fantastic on this. Weighs in at only 4.4 ounces, making it pretty comfortable to carry. 3 3/4 inches of grip area plus a choil. So really nice in that perfect sort of full size EDC um, sort of size range. Okay, the blade on this is, notice, fairly substantial. Right, this is a pretty heavy duty blade, which I absolutely love. And then they've gone and put this hollow grind on it with a stonewash finish. This is my perfect idea of a well-balanced blade, right? I love when I get that thick, chunky steel that's very confidence inspiring, and then a hollow grind, which means it'll cut really well. And I feel like a broken record saying this, but I'm going to say it again. I know there seems to be this insane preference for flat grinds, but a hollow grind, if you actually cut stuff, a hollow grind performs far better, especially in a blade like this. Now, if you want to go to a kitchen knife, I would argue that even in a kitchen knife, if you could do a super big hollow grind, it would still cut better. It just doesn't make sense because it's such a large, wide blade. But a hollow grind in nice thick blade stock like this really makes a lot of sense to me. Now, there is one thing that doesn't make sense, especially given the price point of this. These are pretty expensive, like 380 US dollars. In Canada, these are going to be more like five something. Pretty steep on the price point. By the way, if you want one of these, Thunderbird Gear is the place to go. Steve sent this along with for a very particular reason, which we haven't got to yet, which is why I haven't brought up his name. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. But for the price point, the blade steel here makes no sense at all. This is N690 steel with a Rockwell hardness of 59. What I'd like to see on a knife of this price point is, M390 at 62 Rockwell, or even MagnaCut or something else, something fancy and cool and unique. Not that N690 is not a good blade steel. It absolutely is, but it's more suited to a budget knife. All right. Now, let me say this, guys. To be fair, Europe has not gotten the memo on this for a long time. Like, they continually, you see these high-end knives coming from European makers and South African makers in N690. Somehow, they think it's a high-end steel. Okay. um, and again, it's fine, but it's going to perform about the same as VG10, which is disappointing for a knife of this price point. Now, having said that, um, there's so many other things to make this knife good that I think a lot of people will be willing to overlook the steel choice. Okay, but if anyone from Klotzli ever watches this, please, please keep doing this knife. It's a great knife. I actually love a whole bunch of stuff about it, including, as I've been talking about, this fantastic blade grind. But just switch out the steel. Okay, moving on to the reason that Steve sent this along. I was talking to him about reviewing some other stuff, and he said, look, you should really check out the Klotzli Swiss border guard. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to mess that name up over and over again throughout this video. Um, because it has the most insane action I have ever felt. And when someone who owns a knife store says that, you kind of go, gee, what is going on here? And he is not wrong. This knife is spectacular. I cannot get over how smooth the action is on this knife. It is just stunning. All right. And the big surprise here is, there are lots of knives that have pretty decent action like this. This has a little different feel than most knives that you've handled. Okay. The difference here is that this knife is on washers. It's not on bearings. And that's amazing because this is so smooth and so well done. Um, that, as Steve said, like he just said, this is the smoothest action I've ever felt. And he is not wrong. The action on this is absolutely incredible. The button lock works really well. It's very enjoyable. So that's another nice thing that I like about this. The button lock is a win for sure. But that action is absolutely superb. Oh my goodness. Um, so lockup and deployment is the big story here. This is a button lock. It's a really nicely done button lock. The thumb studs are very accessible. It deploys really well. The detent is pretty nice. It drops shut as I've been trying to show. It's a little harder to do on camera, but oh my goodness, this is so, so good. It's absolutely incredible what a great job they have done on these knives, getting the action so dialed in. All right. So that to me is the big story here. And Steve, you were not wrong. This is absolutely incredible. All right. Now, I'm not done talking about the good features of the knife. We move down to this titanium handle. You can see it's pillar construction. It has been milled to reduce the weight, and that's how it gets down to that 4.4 ounce point. In hand, it feels really, really good. Now, there aren't many reviews out there, but I did notice that Nick Shabazz had done a review on this, and he complained about the ergonomics. And I'm sitting there with this in my hand at the time, holding it, going, I don't get it. Um, I find this actually very, very comfortable in hand. And then it has, in addition to, what I think is a pretty decent. Now, I will say this, in a saber grip, all right, it's good. If you try to do this in a hammer grip, it doesn't make any sense at all. But saber grip is very good. And then if you want to choke up, it works again really, really well in this configuration also. Like this really is nice. Okay. So very well done in terms of ergonomics. The construction is nice. It's a bit of a different, it's sort of a slab-sided titanium, but it's got a little bit of a cut in around here, which is a nice detail. We do have this permanent lanyard, which I'm not in love with, but that's fine. And then we have the sort of Swiss border guard symbol there, which, actually kind of appeals to me. I do ski patrol in the winter, and so this is also a ski patrol symbol. So it works well in that regard. Now, over here, we have the Klotzli Swiss made logo on this bent clip, which the clip works really, really well, goes in and out of pocket without any problems. I have no issues with the clip. Other than at this price point, I would kind of like to see a milled titanium clip. All right. So that's my take on the knife overall. Really, really impressive in a couple of big ways. The two things that aren't great or that I'm not totally in love with, the clip is just okay, the lanyard is okay, and the steel is okay. The other features, the size and weight, the blade to handle ratio, the action, the blade grind, the ergonomics, all of those things are really, really well done. All right, so I will say this, I'm kind of on the fence about this knife. There's a lot to love here, and then there are some things that are a little off-putting, not the least of which is the price point. This is an expensive knife. I suspect, given, the limited knowledge that I have of European manufacturing, that that's probably the reason. Okay, if European labor is very expensive, and so if you're making something there, that price is going to be the price of labor in Europe is going to be reflected. Um, can I recommend this knife? Only if you have heard what I've said and are like, hey, I don't mind N690 steel. Maybe that's your favorite steel. Um, and so you're perfectly willing to pay a higher price point for that steel. If you want to experience the action that is really unlike anything I've felt, I have to agree with Steve. The action on this is in a class all of its own. It doesn't feel like bearings. It doesn't feel like your usual phosphor bronze washers. It's really, really incredible. So I've got to give credit where credit is due. And perhaps that's enough reason to buy this, just to experience that action. For most people, that's probably not going to tip the scale, but nonetheless, this has some pretty cool stuff going on. I do want to quickly throw in a couple of comparisons. All right, an obvious comparison would be a Sebenza. I've also got an XM18 here. All right, sort of hard use, heavy duty tactical style folders, if you will, all on the high end of the spectrum. Let's see, we can move this guy out of the way and bring in the Riot Torrent. So there's another possible comparison for you. How does this stack up to these others? One, it costs less than some of them. It costs the same as some of them. It costs more than some of them. Um, the steel is really the only point where it isn't right on the same, that I wouldn't do a direct comparison and say, yeah, it can hold up pretty well. All right, so that I hope gives you a bit of an idea how that works in terms of value and sort of place in the overall market. All right, so yeah, those are my thoughts on the Klotzli Swiss border guard. Really, really cool knife. I'm really glad that Steve was willing to send this along for me to check out. If you want this, go on over to Thunderbird Gear, check it out, and that's where you can get one. Again, Steve, thanks a lot. If you're not interested in this, you want to look over some other things at Thunderbird Gear, go ahead and do that. I would also encourage you to check out the channel sponsors that are in the description, the other channel sponsors that are in the description box. I will thank you for your time and talk to you later.